I'm Paul Jenkins. I'm the principal investigator for the IDEAL grant here at Franklin Pierce University. Today, our guests are Rachael Bowman and Ashley Jones. Rachael and Ashley are librarians at ConVal Regional High School. Earlier this year, the New Hampshire School Library Media Association announced that the ConVal Library Learning Commons was named as the recipient of the 2019 Outstanding Library Program of the Year Award. The awards committee announcement read in part, "This award recognizes library programs of exceptionally high quality. Our awards committee was truly impressed with the learning commons that is thriving in your school." Rachel and Ashley will lead a discussion of the digital literacy skills of the students with whom they work every day. So at this point, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So thank you, Franklin Pierce and the IDEAL cohort here for having us. We wasn't expecting something like this. And to speak to I'll introduce, I'm Rachael Bowman. So I've been at ConVal for 4 years. This is my 4th year as a school librarian there.
And I'm Ashley Jones, and this is my 5th year at ConVal High School.
So we have worked side by side in our library, transforming it from what would be considered a more traditional school library. You walked in through the security gate with your books. There was no eating or drinking in the library. You weren't allowed to bring your backpacks in. Just kind of the way it had always been done. Lots of tall bookshelves, and we've completely changed that atmosphere at the library. So now it is. We've worked really hard to make it the hub of the whole high school. So that's kind of where we're at as far as the Learning Commons piece of it.
And then in terms of the award that we won this year, even though we were just super excited about it ourselves, what's nice about it is the School Library Program Award or Outstanding Library Program Award, it really emphasizes a school-wide effort and a district-wide effort about learning commons and making libraries accessible. So one of the nice things is even though we're a part of it, a lot of the application questions specifically ask about administrative support and
Just
like
district commitment.
yeah, I couldn't think of the word district.
To the whole program.
Yeah, and one of the nice things about our school in particular is we are lucky enough to have 2 full-time librarians. A lot of high schools our size only have 1, or they have 1 and a paraprofessional, so that alone is a huge commitment coming from our district, and so that's, I think, what we're most proud of is it really recognizes how important our school thinks the library is and has supported us all along the way. So.
And one of the reasons that we've, I think, been able to get that support is by taking on the role of digital integration, technology integration, working with a team at our school and also district-wide. So we work side by side with our technology integrator, our systems building administrator, our principals and assistant principals. So I think we have a little bit of a unique situation at our school. We also meet monthly with our entire district librarian and technology integration. Everyone in our district who falls under those titles meets every month.
And then starting last year, our school district, at least at the middle and high school levels, went about 50% one-to-one. So 2 grades in each building had Chromebooks. This year we're fully one-to-one, so it's grade 5 all the way through grade 12. And we play a pretty big part in that. We kind of call ourselves the tier 1 technology folks. So, anything that something's not quite right, or it needs an update, or it needs to be power washed, kind of those level 1 technology helps. We definitely do a lot of that, and most of the kids and faculty know to kind of come to us first and ask because sometimes we can figure it out. And then what's nice about having those other technology folks in our space is when we can't figure it out, and when our Google searches can't figure it out, we can kind of just pass it along to them. So it's all in one area.
Yeah, so we usually can help with the things that most people need, or we triage it out to those who can help us. And one of our big goals with all of our students at the school is to build habits and instinct to come to the library for help. because we know that for those who are going, whether it's into the community and they can go to their public library, or if they're going to college, developing an instinct to like, I have an issue, I need problem solving help, or I'm looking for better resources, just to have the instinct to go to the library, because that's, I feel like that's been the goal of most college libraries and high school libraries, is really to make it so that it's a welcoming place and that somebody can help you.
Or even just the instinct to ask for help.
Yeah.
Because I feel like sometimes students, when they hit that first wall, they kind of say, well, I'm not going to do it. Or, I'm done here. That was good enough. So mainly come to the library to ask for help, but also just ask for help in general.
Yeah. As far as the digital readiness of our students, or the how digitally prepared they are, that's been the focus over the past roughly 2 to 3 years, moving from the lab-based environment that our school had to now this one-to-one environment has been it's been great, but it's also challenging, partly because switching to a Chrome environment has a lot of advantages, but also some disadvantages, because the filtering systems and the privacy issues that we're dealing with the under 18 group are, it's not like we can just try anything, especially right now with the new state law that came out of HB 1612. We've had to kind of put the brakes on some of the new apps. Teachers will go to a conference and hear about some new great thing and want to try it, but we're not disallowing people to use it, but we're asking them to present it to us first, or to just be aware that we may have to allow certain things and approve others.
And then going along with teachers, our school is kind of trying to get all the teachers up on the same level in terms of using technology and digital resources, and we actually have a PLC that meets every Wednesday. It's our faculty meeting after school, and right now the focus is blended learning, so we have 2 people. One is our tech integrator, and one is a social studies teacher who is pretty adept in technology, and they're kind of leading it. It's a lot of individual work, so working on certain assignments or your website or whatever it might be to try and enhance it, but also working as departments, also talking across departments to see what other people are doing. Could I possibly be using that too? So that's been a really nice help, because as I'm sure you guys are aware, there are some people who are super comfortable with technology and some people who are still kind of making their way. So it's a nice way for us to all come together and kind of work on it as a team.
And I'll be curious to hear your questions. We met last year, with a number of college librarians at Concord High School last spring, to have a conversation. It was, our senior, your freshman kind of conversation about that transition from high school to college and what the expectations are. What our big push this year has been to try to develop consistency around citations and just giving credit to where they're finding their information. Images has always been the big challenge at the high school because they're so easy to just take. So we've kind of working with the administration and then also with teachers, really building up just a base level expectation. So we're not going to accept a URL, or we're not going to allow for someone to just not put anything in and claim fair use. So we feel like we're really making progress for the first time this year. We're seeing students come up and ask. We're seeing teachers who maybe in the past haven't required those kinds of things. So I feel like we are making some progress. And maybe this isn't the best way to do it, but our focus hasn't been on perfection of, getting the citation exactly right based on the format, as much as being consistent in doing it, having the instinct to do it, and knowing that ultimately you're going to need to do it the way your professor asks you to do it. So if they have their own way, or if they have, they are working off MLA 7 instead of 8, then that's what you do. But you need to know to do it and to ask how how someone wants it done.
And then I would just say one of the biggest challenges, or I guess two of the biggest challenges we've seen in terms of kind of digital literacy is number one, the filtering that Rachel mentioned and all the privacy. Right now we're operating on a walled garden. So all of our students have a Gmail account associated with the school, but they cannot email anybody or sign up for anything outside of that Gmail domain. And it's really tricky because the Chromebooks don't allow you to go on a personal email. So if you're trying to email colleges, or you're trying to sign up for VLAX, or you're trying to do any legitimate educational thing, you hit this wall and you're stopped. So it's something that we've been pushing to try and open to the best of our ability. But that's one of the biggest things that we notice. And then secondly, I think a lot, and I'm sure you guys see this too, but I think a lot of people assume that because these students have grown up with technology, smartphone in hand, video games, Facebook, whatever it is, that they know how to do everything technology related. And they're really good at certain things, like posting or, sharing or Snapchatting. And I'm sure some of them, are really good at certain outlets. But overall, like we just talked about writing for the web, a lot of them, you ask them to create a presentation and they have full paragraphs instead of just kind of bullet points, and just little things like that. I think that we all fall into that assumption that, yep, they know what they're doing, they know what PowerPoint is, and I don't know if anybody is explicitly teaching those skills anymore, because you just assume they've already learned it or they're gonna learn it. So I would say for me, those are the two biggest.
Even composing an email. No one's taught them ever how to do it. They're used to texting, and so they're translating it over, and it doesn't, we've talked to a number of kids and trying to just develop so that they know when to have a more formal, communication versus a casual one. And I know I have a almost 18-year-old son, and just even knowing to put a space between the dear so-and-so and the text, and it's not there. They don't, and it's not for not wanting to do it. I just don't think they have any background in it. So, and we kind of take that for granted, because when would they have learned it? So we're just integrated kind of throughout the whole building, and we are really fortunate to have a wonderful group of teachers and administrators who believe in our program, believe in us, and have allowed us to kind of collaborate across the building with everybody. So we'd love to hear any questions you guys have, or if there's any curiosities you have about the high school setting right now.
Yeah, I'm interested. Frank Cohen, political science professor here. I'm interested in these meetings you have. You said they're weekly.
The monthly, yeah.
Monthly.
Faculty meetings.
Faculty ones. And are those required? Or? Okay. And you are discussing digital literacy at the meetings?
It's officially called blended learning. So it could be, one meeting might be specifically focused on Google Sites, or teachers enhancing that. So
that's what I was going to ask.
Yep.
Specific topics.
Yep. So we've done a lot with we obviously have Chromebooks, so they're integrated with the G Suite. So we use Google Classroom, Google Sites. We also had a group last year that met weekly, but it was about a third of our teaching staff, and that was specifically kind of focused on Classroom and how to use it and the different things you can do. This year the focus is with the entire faculty, and it's a lot on Google Sites and Google Classroom, and just kind of trying to get everybody on the same page. It's usually about 3 meetings a month. Occasionally they'll throw in a kind of catch up with the news type of thing, or a department meeting, but for the most part we're pretty much just working on blended learning.
And what's the attitude of the teachers at the meeting when you talk about something like using Google Sites in the classroom? I'm just curious.
Yeah.
I mean, do folks come across as just feeling like, well, I have to be here, so I got to listen, or are they really getting interested? I mean, or it's a mix.
I think it's probably a mix. I think what Ashley and I personally feel is there's this trying to balance the novice versus the expert, and trying to make it so that it's not a waste of time for everybody. So we've differentiated as best we can. So offering one-on-one support for people that are really just like last year, just wanted help creating their classroom. Like they didn't know how to use it. So versus people who had already maybe been using it on their own for the past couple of years. Just like when we work with students, there are some people who can teach others. There are people who really will need their hand held through a lot of it. And we've taken some of the role of trying to work with those people who are a little unsure and are hesitant to use some of these products because they don't feel like they know how to. We had a great interaction yesterday with our graphic design teacher who, can build websites from scratch, and he's much more knowledgeable than we are, but he wasn't familiar with working with Google Sites because he never uses it, but he needed to create something for his class. So we helped him figure out how to do something he was trying to do with it. So it's really, I think one of the big roles we've taken is trying to make it more approachable to more staff and to really reach out to individuals to make them comfortable with the whole process, or to use their expertise so that they're not just sitting there feeling like, I already know how to do this, I don't need to be sitting here.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm John Villamere from Education. I got a couple questions. One is, I go to some schools where, like Murdoch Middle School, where they use the Summit program, so it's sort of a top-down, you're going to be using these programs specifically. Is this a top-down approach, or are faculty allowed to use any apps that they see or they choose themselves?
So there's been a big push for all teaching staff, faculty to use Google Classroom. So that one I would say has been a top-down approach. They're just trying to make it more consistent for the students, get it in all 4 of their classes. And then in terms of any apps or extensions, kind of like what Rachel mentioned earlier with the new legislation about data privacy and students, we're kind of in this weird limbo right now. Before it was kind of, if you saw something and it wasn't blocked, go for it. If you saw something and it was blocked, ask about it, and maybe we can get it unblocked. Maybe it got flagged for like a weird term, or there might be like a slight game component, or something silly like that. But now we, and I imagine we're going to be part of the process, but now as a district, we have to vet everything that our students use, anything that requires a sign-in or a login or any identifying data. So I'm not 100% sure where that's going to go. I think it's going to kind of go into effect at the beginning of next school year, and we're going to try and build some type of library of resources that have been approved, and teachers can select from that. But just kind of moving forward, I don't think it's going to be, you go to a conference, you see this tool, and you just have your kids use it.
I've never seen, you were saying 5 through 12 total integration with Chromebooks. How has that affected the day-to-day teaching? Do you see, I guess part of our charge is to see what exactly the digital literacy level as they come to us. What do they have at ConVal? How is it being integrated right now, and what are the most popular apps?
Sure. I think this year is kind of our not a pilot year, but this is the first year where we're really seeing, I think, true integration, because last year only half of our high school had it, and most of our classes are blended. So if you have freshmen and sophomores in a class with juniors and seniors, but only half of them have Chromebooks, it was awkward to have any real integration. Now I think teachers are using them as Chromebook, we want your Chromebooks out. We're doing this right now. Okay, I want them closed, or I want them put away, or this is like a non-Chromebook day. So that kind of integration where kids can, rather than scheduling a lab, everybody stands up, walks out of the room, that takes 10 minutes. They've, sit in the lab, whether they need it the whole time or not, they've kind of booked it, so they stay there. So I feel like it allows for a more natural, move from screen to not screen time. Teachers are using the question functions a lot more within classroom to, maybe for those students who don't feel comfortable talking, but might have something really insightful to comment, to ask or to pose, that they will answer in the question format
So a
through
threaded
Classroom.
discussion sort of format?
Yeah. Whether it's over the 24-hour period and they're doing it at home, or even sometimes actively doing it in the classroom. If you've got 20 kids sitting in a room, there's always that few that will not speak, but they might type. So I think that kind of integration is happening. The Chromebooks are limited. They are just kind of the internet in a box is what our technology integrator calls it. But I think that using our library resources has been helpful. We have a lot of databases and the library catalog, and we have access to the New York Times and various other resources that kids can just access right from their Chromebook if they're doing research in class for 20 minutes.
And then I would just say pretty much everything in the G Suite is really popular with teachers. A lot of people in our school are using Newsella. We don't have a school subscription, so teachers are just doing their own and kind of sharing those articles. They really like the fact that you can change the reading level on those. So if they do, we have co-teaching at ConVal, and a lot of our classes have a wide array of skills. And so it's nice for them to have kids read the same article, but have it be at different levels depending on. It's called Newsella, and it
gathers. It's like it's a it gathers articles. So say it pulls an article from on climate change. It allows you to adjust it for reading level from anywhere from roughly a 3rd grade level up to like a 12th grade.
And it's the same content. It's still the same article technically.
But the Lexile level, the words that they use are different. Even the way they use, like the title will be simplified. It's an interesting program. Lots of high schools dabble with it, but it's expensive. So most people don't have a full pro subscription that allows you to do even more fine tuning.
Or you can do like reading check-ins, like quizzes at the end when you have the pro.
Yeah, for comprehension.
Yeah. So I would say that's pretty popular. I feel like a fair number of our teachers use Kahoot or Quizlet, just kind of to test learning throughout the block. There was one more I had.
Yeah,
I'll think of it.
Yeah, so top-down wise, I don't think we're from where I sit, I feel like we're a pretty democratic school, or at least our building is, because that's what we know best. But I think because just the very fact that our kids have to work on Chromebooks forces, the G Suite, we don't really have a choice. Like you can't choose to work with Microsoft instead because it's not available on the Chromebooks. So I think that will be one big shift for students coming out of high schools and coming into colleges. I know my own child who's in college, frequently needs to figure out how to, get Microsoft Office or Adobe products because that wasn't something that they necessarily had experience with. Before, when we had our labs, I think there was a little bit more understanding of PCs and Mac environments, or than these kids now are going to be working more in the Chrome environment.
Sure. But it's accurate to say all teachers will have Chrome, Google Classroom.
Yeah.
All of them will, and so that they operate from some sort of a digital sort of format for the class with, they could do flipped classroom and all those sort of things.
Yep.
Okay.
And that's definitely for the students, but it's also in the secondary school level and elementary school level, it's also for the parents.
Sure.
So parents have an expectation that they can have, get information through that or access it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Does the Google Sites thing kind of act like an LMS for you, where faculty can put in assignments and stuff like that?
So you mean for the library management system or the?
No, just for those. You talk about Google Sites. I'm not sure everyone's familiar
Absolutely.
with what those are.
Yeah. So for the Google Sites, it's more about I think our students each teacher has their own Google site, just as their like kind of web page. But then students use them frequently as a form of presenting their information. So it's really more for students who are compiling, or if they're, especially if like they're collaborating on something with other students, they'll develop a Google site as a way to present.
It's their personal site.
Correct. Yeah.
Hi, Mary Kelly, History Department here. So do you see your work as maybe part of an incremental, we'll say, ascendancy in digital literacy and learning, or was it some kind of sea change at your school?
I think that this is, it's like, this is the way the tide's going.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that our district's commitment to going one-to-one, and the way our school district does it is we provide the Chromebook device for them, and they would have it over the course of 3 to 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
So we do take them back in the summer, but I think that the commitment to digital technology,
Mm-hmm.
And digital readiness is a priority,
Mm-hmm.
with an emphasis still on content. So like, especially at the high school level, our content teachers are not teaching technology, they're teaching the content, and then people like us are helping to support them,
Mm-hmm.
either by being in the classroom or working with people individually. But I do think that we've stepped off the ledge, and now we know, like, that's what we're doing.
Okay. And so if you are logically have the focus on content, we can all understand that.
Yes.
Have you done much thinking around assessment in terms of the learning outcomes from your work as opposed to before the Chromebooks and the use of the Google sites and all you're doing?
I don't know if do you think the Bright Bites kind of?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if our district has any plans for a formal assessment. I know as a district we've been taking, both students, parents, and staff have all been taking surveys developed with an outside company,
Mm-hmm.
at set increments. So it started before, and now we've done it, I think, 3 or 4 times since we've had the Chromebooks. So we're definitely tracking data related to it. I don't 100% know if it's.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
Satisfaction, or is it actual, like, are students learning improving
Mm-hmm.
with this?
I feel like also because it's our first year, like our first
Yeah.
official year with all of them having Chromebooks, I'm sure in the next year or two we'll probably develop something or start tracking the grades more. This year and last year have been a lot of just like trying to catch up and like, keep our feet under us type of thing. So I know the surveys I think are more how comfortable do you feel or how often do you assign something. And I do feel like once we get kind of that base level built, we will start tracking the grades a little more. But again, it's so new right now.
The Bright Bites survey that Ashley was referring to that went out district-wide, that one does capture more than satisfaction.
Mm-hmm.
It is about,
Yeah.
readiness, support.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of goes into, it's a very long survey. It takes a long time to take it. But in addition to that, working simultaneously with the Blended Learning PLC, so making sure that all teachers have familiarity with what we're doing. We've been working on common assessments in our district-wide, but in our building, so that every, if you're taking, government and economics, regardless of what teacher you have, that there's this common assessment. And those are being, structured with the technology in mind and with, just making sure that there's a consistency and a direction that's for all of our kids.
Yeah, and nationally, I think that kind of fine tuning is absolutely in process. The what you just said, the kind of little transition to assessing with the technological approaches in mind, and we don't have a what might I call it, a coordinated set of assessment mechanisms here, for that exact focus. Even though, individually we might have assessment mechanisms for learning outcomes in our classes. So you're not alone.
Well, and I will say for the common assessments, I think one thing that's been really important, and we still have work to do on this, developing the common assessments was very important and, took a significant amount of time. But now trying to push towards having the time, because it's always about time, having the time for teachers to sit together and then go over the common assessments, the results from the common assessment, to see this question isn't working, or this isn't, why is everybody getting this wrong? Clearly we're missing something, or we need to figure out a better way to ask the question. So I think that's always that key, is you work so hard to get the Chromebooks out, or you work really hard to write the test, but then having the time to sit back and reflect and figure out what's working and what's not working. And I feel like that's one of the big advantages we've had, because we get to work together. We have this sounding board where we're constantly reflecting on, this approach with the Chromebooks isn't working anymore. Always giving a loaner to a student who forgot theirs isn't teaching them to ever need to bring it in, because we just give them one. So we don't do that anymore. And we've been really nice about it, and we explain why, but, and there's always an extenuating circumstance, but really kind of trying to be stop, we need to rethink this. We're going to do this differently next semester or next year. So.
And then just to go with your question a tiny bit more, I do feel like because we were doing common assessments at the exact same time Chromebooks started, it is kind of, I don't know if we'd almost be able to pull separate data, because they both happen around the same time and they were both hopefully improvements. So it's tricky.
I have a follow-up about the assessments.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the faculty here would say our students come in with a predisposed sense of what the correct answer is. And I'm curious what your view of those assessments would be at the high school level. Is there a singular answer in the assessments that are being that are taught, or is it an open-ended sort of approach? And
more critical thinking kind of. I think that's what we want. I think what we see is most students want it to just be black. They just want to know what the right answer is. Tell me what the right answer is and I'll do it. And I think that there is a push, a conscious push to, especially at some of our upper level courses, to try to get kids to think more critically. They are reluctant to do so. And I don't know if that's, I perceive it, I'm getting to an age where I'm starting to perceive things as well, it didn't used to be like that. So it seems new. I don't know if that's accurate, or if it's always been like that. But we are seeing a little bit of a lack of perseverance, or just, problem solving skills. So if the thing they think, will work to fix something doesn't work, they sort of give up. And they'll come and ask us, and we always joke that half the time we end up Googling it to figure it out, and then we start to piece it together. It's not just the answer pops up for us. We have to do some digging, we have to try some things out, but sometimes they don't even think to do that, and that surprises us.
Doesn't change here either. That's ironic. It's infused throughout Common Core, and, and critical thinking is there, yet the assessments for it tend to be not critically thought out, so that it becomes a right or wrong answer. There, I critically thought it's on the rubric, so I can move on. So that's...
Our school we do a blend of, one thing I think that has helped us a little bit is we do, as part of our grading system, we do narratives as well. There's an expectation that teachers are doing narratives. as part of the grades. So it does kind of force a little bit of a conversation about some of those kinds of things that a student, like, they might be getting a B and that's great. There's a B on their report card. But as a parent or as a student, like, where am I at? So I think sometimes those narratives help flesh some of that out.
I got one final question. The students come in not necessarily as digital natives. They don't come here either. Is there training that's centralized to how to use Google Classroom, to how to use how do you ready the students to start at the start gate?
Well, and I think that's inevitably the problem that we're seeing is there's no freshman academy. There's no, the orientation is a half day and it's mainly, our building's really confusing, so here's where your classes are, and here's the cafeteria, and here's the nurse. And so I think we just assume, like, I think that is one of the downfalls of
You're moving so fast.
of students this age is people just assume, oh, you must know it's Google. Google's easy, that type of thing. And I do think we're doing them a disservice to some extent. And
or assuming, because they're reasonably adept on their phone doesn't mean that they can function in an academic setting. It'll be interesting to see, because it's going to be 5th grade through 12th grade, at least in our district, it'll be interesting to see if, what you're teaching a 5th grader to how to use Classroom, I think is very different than a 10th grader, a 16-year-old. So it'll be interesting to see if those things develop. We're looking to do some vertical alignment around digital citizenship, so that we're not just repeating the same things to them, but really building off of what the 7th and 8th grade has worked on. Now we'll be bringing into like 9th and 10th grade, and without having to repeat it completely. So I think that there's, like you guys too, there's so many things on the table right now that we know are so important. Like, we know that critical thinking and problem solving and digital citizenship, all of these things really matter to these kids, and trying to figure out where to piece it in is really tricky, because our kids walk in the door the first day, and if you're a 14-year-old freshman, you might be in a class like a robotics class that has sophomores and juniors and seniors, and so there's not one time to get to everybody, and then the semester changes and everything, so.
well, and how do we get to them in a meaningful way?
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Right. We talk sometimes, but we trying to work with them, and our approach has really been through building relationships, both with teachers and with students, and it's been a intentional process, but I feel like we're getting there as far as building the authentic relationships.
This follows the issue of the critical thinking and all, but instead of going to the assessment, I want to move backward. And it may be too specific a question, but one of the things about whether it's Chromebook or the laptops that everybody, the students tend to use it for factoids. And they in class to look it up, and they'll and I was wondering if you were aware of ways that teachers are using assignments or structuring assignments to kind of encourage the more critical analysis, the use of what's out there for more than I got the fact that proves my point, or something of that sort.
You want to?
I know my husband is a social studies teacher at the high school, and he teaches U.S. history. And I think there is a challenge of people wanting to come in knowing, like, these are my facts, or these are the things that I know, and kind of coming in it from an argumentative stance. And especially, I think, in the current environment we're in, where things are a little more politicized, it is this fine, like, especially at the high school level, I think, being respectful, being open to listening to different viewpoints in a way that is not personal, has been a big challenge, whether it's in humanities, like any of our humanities classes, and in some of our science classes. We have people who have really strong opinions about things and want to kind of beat you with facts. But I think that many of our teachers are working through that with conversations in class rather than like specific, assignments or assessments, but is developing classroom culture to moderate and work towards conversation. And I know there's a little bit of, a few of our teachers really work with the Harkness method that encourages student-led conversation. But sometimes at the high school level, especially, if you're not working with 12 kids, but you've got 25, you need to help facilitate that to make it productive.
And I think it's also, and we struggle with this too, not being classroom teachers and not being in the rooms all the time. Instead of asking kids to do something that there is a right or a wrong answer that they can Google right away, trying to kind of flip the question to make it so they can have a more creative answer and there isn't one right or wrong. For example, we were in a class was it last week, I think, an English class, and we were talking to them about using high quality sources. And we gave them a couple examples, and instead of what we were originally going to do is have them say, is it a red? So no way, I shouldn't use that. Is it a yellow where, maybe there's something I should be questioning, or is it a green? Go for it. And instead of just having them tell us red, yellow, or green, what we did is we assigned it red, yellow, or green, and we asked them to tell us why. And so it could be an array of answers. They might pick up on something that we didn't pick up on, and they would have to talk to their group a little more. So I think it's something we've been trying to keep in mind of how can we make it a little more
engaging,
not as black and white. Like you have to think a little more about it. And another example that we learned at one of our conferences is when you're in a health class, instead of just having the kids research a certain ailment or disease and give you the facts, give them some symptoms, make them research multiple diseases and try and, come to a conclusion of what this particular thing could be. So I think a lot of our teachers are already doing that, but it's kind of, how can we start flipping more assignments to make them not as black and white, this is the right answer type of thing.
What you did with the red, yellow, and green,
Yeah.
instead of find the right category,
Yeah.
you said why.
Why did we pick this? Why do you think the librarian?
And the why rather than the right answer.
And we got some really good answers, and there were groups where we saw the pairings and we were like, oh gosh, how is this going to go? And they had some of the best, most insightful answers because they sat and they talked and they thought about it. And they're working on the projects this week, so we'll see what kind of impact we had. But we're hoping, and it's all about trying, and if it doesn't work, let's try something else.
So just, an example was, one of the articles was, just because it's Time Magazine, okay, you've heard of that, you know it's a credible source, but the link that's in it doesn't link to anything anymore. And I can't find a copy of that report from 7 or 8 years ago anywhere. So doesn't mean you can't use it as a source, but it should give you pause. It should make you think for a second. It should make you investigate a little. And those are the kinds of things that we're trying to, take something that's been done and think of a different approach to it. Because it's also more fun. It's more, I think they feel like they have more voice in it. And we try to make it so that, it's a very safe atmosphere, and you're not gonna get, we're not looking to dock you points if you didn't say the right thing. So.
I have a assessment.
Yeah.
Is there
Education.
is there a connection between the use of the Chromebooks and demonstration of compliance to the state? Do you harvest from the student work?
Around privacy or around compliance with
State standards?
No, not that I'm aware of. It doesn't harvest anything from the Chromebooks.
But the teachers do they make the connections?
For standards?
Yeah.
Yeah, we use a curriculum mapping program that has been, our focus has been on common assessments over the past year or so, trying to develop those, because in order to create competencies, we're kind of working backwards.
Right.
So rather than create our competencies from the standards and then we developed our what we want our kids to know, and then kind of figure out what the competencies would be from that. So we've kind of worked at it from a little bit of a different approach based on what other schools have suggested, that like what they wished they had done when they went to competencies.
Right.
So we are not a full competency-based program yet, but that's what we're working towards.
Yeah.
And this year, our school, in relation to blended learning, the standard we've been working off this year is the ISTE standards for the technology standards around
Creative communicator.
creative communication. Yeah. So how do we get kids to creatively communicate their ideas?
So the process is like meaningful standards that the teachers are generating for
Yeah.
what they think they should know, but then you cross-treat it to what the standards are from the demands of the state.
Yes.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
cool.
So each department obviously is working off their own standards.
Right.
We don't just work off of, one set. The science is working off the next gen, and
What's ISTE? Is that just for high school level or? Oh,
I think that's national. I'm going to forget what the acronym is.
Oh, that's
It's like
okay.
International Standards
For technology.
Technology.
something.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's one for students, one for teachers. So it's there's differences, and we intentionally chose to pick one standard to work on this year to prioritize.
So you've said a lot. That's okay.
Need it for the film.
You've said a lot about how, as librarians, you're providing services to the community, to the faculty, to the staff. Could you talk a little bit about how being involved in this has benefited, or what benefits you see to the core functions of the library by being involved in this?
Yeah, I would say, as Rachel mentioned before, when we both started, it was very much kind of your stereotypical library. There weren't a ton of kids who came in there on their own time for their own choosing. There weren't a lot of teachers who kind of stopped by and asked for help. So we'd have to run a report. I can't say for sure if our numbers have improved significantly, but I will say the space itself is used all the time. We have like 80 to 85 students in there in the morning, every single morning, just hanging out before school starts. We have kids who want to be there during free blocks or time that they're not in class. We have teachers who kind of use it as their prep block space, and they come in. Our numbers in terms of collaboration, so the number of teachers who have come up to us and asked, hey, I'm trying to do this, can you help me? Or hey, I want you to come in my class and talk to students about this, that, the other. Those have gone up significantly. And even though collaboration, I guess technically, if you think of a more traditional library, may not have been one of those stats, it is something that's so incredibly important. So I consider that a huge boost to our library program.
And we do still, one of our primary roles in the building is this technology help and promotion of kind of the school goals. But we also have a great book collection, and we have, we work with the English teachers to make sure that their kids are finding the books that will be great for them. We've integrated, we've recently, added Overdrive, so that now that every kid does have a Chromebook, I felt it didn't feel as useful before kids had Chromebooks, but now everybody has a digital device that they could access, pull up an ebook on.
Or audiobooks.
Or audiobooks are really popular for some of our students who struggle a little bit with reading, but don't want to listen to like a robotic, version of it. So I think that, again, we're aligning our collection. Most of our nonfiction is now digital. We still have some, but as a high school, we can't keep up with, everything. So rather than having one copy of a book, if I can buy it as a digital and they can all access it at the same time with our reference collection, that's been, a priority we've put. Our fiction is still basically all print because that's what kids want.
Yeah, thanks. I was just going to ask about that. Studies have shown that even though they're digital natives, the kids still like to use print books versus ebooks, whereas collection development trends are ebooks.
Yeah.
So you just sort of touched on that a little bit, but can you elaborate on that a little bit? And then since I've got the mic, also could you talk about some specifics of digital citizenship? You mentioned that you've been talking about that with the students a little bit, but could you get into some specifics? So sort of a two-part question.
Absolutely. Yeah. You want to talk about the collection?
Yes. I'm sorry, what was the collection question again?
Just this tension between wanting to build your collection with ebooks, but the fact that the kids still like to read print books.
Yep. So I would say basically all of our fiction, like Rachel said, is still print. We have a pretty healthy budget for a high school, so we are able to get a lot of new books every year, and we always buy them in print. We don't have many kids requesting ebooks, but as Rachel said, we did just join Overdrive, so they have some. What else is really nice is the Peterborough Town Library has kind of partnered with us, and there are 9 schools in our district, and a lot of them, I believe every town except for Sharon has their own public library, but some of the hours are really weird. You know, it might only be 2 or 3 hours on one day. Some of the kids can't get there. So Peterborough has offered that every student who goes to ConVal High School can get a Peterborough Town Library card, so they can access ebooks that way too, digitally, or the bus can drop them off. It's right down the street. So that's been really nice. And then in terms of nonfiction, we're still buying some in print. Especially for projects that we know teachers come up and have their kids look at books. The social studies, Eastern World, it's a freshman class. They always do a country project, so we make sure that those are kind of all up to date. And other interesting ones we always get. But then we've been trying to up our digital collection of those ebooks just because it's mainly through like some of our databases, but all the kids can access it at once. So if they all are studying the same thing, it doesn't really make sense to order the one book versus the multi-user online book. And generally speaking, those are kind of the books that I don't think many students would pull off the shelf to kind of pleasure read. So I feel like it works for us.
And we use, we have access to EBSCO, and we try to, especially with some of our AP classes, or some of our upper level classes, just making sure that kids are aware of that. And we always tell them, like, when you get to college, you're going to be accessing EBSCO databases. And the version we have, it's still accessing Academic Search Premier and some of those, but it's a little bit friendlier. It's designed to look more like the Gale products, the Gale databases. And the other thing I wanted to say is we had like a little moment, I think it was last year, where we had this moment of, we throw out the word databases as if they know what we're talking about. And then we pause and we're like, you guys probably don't know what a database is. So, and then like those are those things where we kind of have to catch ourselves and step back and not assume that they know what that is. And then even with digital citizenship, you know, we can talk about, you know, how you have to make sure you cite your work, because when you go to college, it's going to be, you know, it's part of the whole, you know, academic process and why it matters, and it's, you know, it's very serious. Our approach doesn't usually take the, you know, like you could get thrown out of school for it. We try not to scare them with it, because they're going to make mistakes, and you know, but if they try, you know, if we say, if you make the effort and you're consistent in your, and you can defend why you did it the way you did it, you can always have a conversation. But whether you're going into college or you're going into the workforce or you're starting your own business, you can't just grab an image off of Google and throw it up on a sign and stick it on your truck, because that's going to get you into trouble. And we offer them, which one thing I'm assuming colleges probably don't offer necessarily, is we show them how to grab images, say from, you know, how to do a Google image search in an ethical and responsible way. So they're using ones that they have permission to use. But it's not always an easy thing to do. Like, it's easy, but first we have to build the habit that they cite images. So we have a subscription to an image database that they can use, and that generates the citation for them. So even just getting into the habit of picture, citation. Then as they develop into like junior and senior year, showing them all these other places that they can go to get images that they have permissions to use, Doesn't mean you still don't have to give credit, but you have the permission to use it. The digital citizenship piece, although it's obviously always on everybody's mind, but every teacher has been handling it slightly differently. Some people, it's a real passion, and they talk about, the digital tattoos. They talk about, moving away from digital footprint to digital tattoo as an idea that, this is going to be with you forever, even if you have it removed, the outline is still there. So I think that has been something that's on all of our minds, and being very aware that the conversation around digital citizenship crosses like our role as librarians, it crosses into, content teachers, but it also crosses into our counseling department. So figuring out who's going to take which pieces of it and where we can integrate it naturally. So in our health and wellness class, we can integrate, a number of pieces around, what you post online, around, even bullying behaviors. But our role, besides promoting it in general as an idea, will be really focused on responsible and ethical use of information, and just developing the habits to use quality resources, to give credit. Yeah.
And I would just add that I think going along with letting kids know what it is we have to get all of our faculty on board too. So again, we've been making some headway this year, but as you guys know, like, you can't change everything overnight. It's building habits, it's building understanding. So I think in a perfect world, we would have some type of freshman academy or freshman seminar that all of them go through, and we can talk about things like what is Google Sites and how do you post to the web, but we can also talk about this stuff. But until we get to that point, or if we ever do, I think realistically the best we can do is try and figure out ways to insert it where it's more meaningful, and then also whether it be PD or us talking during the faculty meeting we have weekly, just really trying to kind of hammer these points into our faculty that if we're not all doing it, it's not going to stick and it's not going to feel as important.
And modeling it,
yeah,
like modeling it to the students so that they can see it. I also think with the digital citizenship piece, one of the things I became very aware of, I came out of I'd never worked in a school before. So I came into this really cold. So it was like figuring it out. I'd worked in law offices. And so I kind of jumped into this with, everything was new. And we were able to we both worked through the Plymouth State University program to get our librarian certification to work in the schools, which was very helpful and kind of covered a lot of the things we need to know. But is really teaching kids, rather than just scaring them, because when you scare them and then you can't back that up and they can see a million examples of where that consequence didn't happen, they just stop listening. So for me, it was really thinking in terms of your professional self and your private self. So just like many, people who work have like their professional laptop, and then how you behave on your Chromebook is going to maybe be different than how you are on your phone. And you need to be aware of what you're projecting out to the whole world, but really, being like, I'm wearing my different hat right now. Like, I need to behave differently in this setting, because I think this casualization of that is kind of across the entire culture right now is great, and kids are much more likely to come talk to an adult sometimes. They're very informal, but I think just teaching them that there's a time and a place for different behaviors and different communications. So we've that's part of it.
Well, thank you very much, Rachel and Ashley, that you've given us a lot to think about, and it's I think all of us would agree that a lot of your efforts really are paralleling what the ideal team is working on. I mean, it sounds like there's so many common issues that we're battling with. But anyway, thank you so much. Let's have a good round of applause for our panelists.
Thank you.